a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary is a 1983 horror novel by American writer Stephen King, nominated for a World Fantasy Award for Best Novel in 1986, and adapted into a 1989 film of the same name. In November 2013, PS Publishing released Pet Sematary in a limited 30th anniversary edition. Plot: Louis Creed, a doctor from Chicago, is appointed director of the University of Maine's Campus Health Service. He moves to a large house near the small town of Ludlow with his wife Rachel, their two young children, Ellie and Gage, and Ellie's cat, Church. From the moment they arrive, the family runs into trouble. Ellie hurts her knee after falling off a swing, and Gage is stung by a bee. Their new neighbor, an elderly man named Judd Crandall, comes to help. He warns Louis and Rachel about the highway that runs past their house. It is constantly used by speeding trucks. Judd and Louis quickly become close friends. Since Louis' father died when he was 3, he sees Judd as a surrogate father. A few weeks after the Creeds move in, Judd puts the friendship on the line when he takes the family on a walk in the woods behind their home. A well-tended path leads to a pet cemetery where the children of the town bury their deceased animals. The outing provokes a heated argument between Louis and Rachel the next day. Rachel disapproves of discussing death, and she worries about how Ellie may be affected by what she saw at the cemetery. Louis himself has a traumatic experience during the first week of classes. Victor Pascoe, a student who has been fatally injured in an automobile accident, addresses his dying words to Louis personally, even though the two men are strangers. On the night following Pascoe's death, Louis experiences what he believes is a very vivid dream in which he meets Pascoe, who leads him to the deadfall at the back of the cemetery, and warns Louis to not go beyond, no matter how much you feel you need to. Louis wakes up in bed the next morning convinced it was, in fact, a dream, until he finds his feet and bedsheets covered with dried mud and pine needles. Nevertheless, Louis dismisses the dream as the product of the stress he experienced during Pascoe's death, coupled with his wife's lingering anxieties about the subject of death. Louis is forced to confront the subject of death at Halloween, when Judd's wife, Norma, suffers a near-fatal heart attack. Thanks to Louis' prompt attention, Norma makes a quick recovery. Judd is grateful for Louis' help and decides to repay him after Church is run over outside his home at Thanksgiving. Rachel and the kids are visiting Rachel's parents in Chicago, but Louis frets over breaking the bad news to Ellie. Sympathizing with Louis, Judd takes him to the pet cemetery, supposedly to bury Church. But instead of stopping there, Judd leads Louis' father on a frightening journey to the real cemetery, an ancient burial ground that was once used by the Mi'kmaq Indians. There Louis buries the cat on Judd's instruction, with Judd saying that animals buried there have come back to life. Not really believing, Louis thinks that the subject is finished until the next afternoon when Church returns home. It is, however, obvious that the cat is not the same as before. While he used to be vibrant and lively, he now acts ornery and a little dead, in Louis' words. Church hunts for mice and birds much more often, but he rips them apart without eating them. The cat also smells so bad that Ellie no longer wants him in her room at night. Judd confirms that this condition is the rule, rather than the exception, for animals who have been resurrected in this fashion. Louis is deeply disturbed by Church's resurrection and begins to wish that he had never done it. 2-year-old Gage is run over by a speeding truck in a horrible accident several months later. Overcome with despair, Louis considers bringing his son back to life with the help of the burial ground. Judd, guessing what Louis is planning, attempts to dissuade him by telling him the gruesome story of the last person who was resurrected by the burial ground. Judd concludes that the place has a power, its own evil purpose, and may have caused Gage's death, because Judd introduced Louis to it. Despite Judd's warning and his own reservations about the idea, Louis' grief and guilt spur him to carry out his plan. Louis exhumes Gage's body from his grave and enters him in the burial ground. Gage returns from the dead as a monstrous, demonic shadow of his former self and kills both Judd and Rachel. After killing Church, Louis confronts his son and sends him back to the grave with a lethal injection of chemicals from his medical supply stock. After burning the Crandall house down, he returns to the burial ground with his wife's corpse, thinking that if he buries the body faster than he did Gage's there will be a different result. The book ends with Louis sitting with his back to the door playing solitaire, listening to Rachel's reanimated corpse walk up behind him to drop a cold hand on his shoulder while her voice rasps, "Darling." Origin and inspiration. In 1978, King returned to his alma mater, the University of Maine at Orono, to teach for a year as a gesture of gratitude for the education he had received there. During this time his family rented a house on a busy road in Orrington. The road claimed the lives of a number of pets, and the neighborhood children had created a pet cemetery in a field near the King's home. King's daughter Naomi buried her cat, Smucky. Thereafter it was hit, and shortly thereafter their son Owen had a close call running toward the road. King wrote the novel based on their experiences, but feeling he had gone too far with the subject matter of the book, he discarded the idea of having it published, particularly since both his wife Tabitha and friend Peter Straub agreed Pet Sematary was too dark and unenjoyable. However, needing a final book for his contract, King reluctantly submitted it to Doubleday on the advice of his wife Tabitha. The subsequent success of the book made King note how both Americans and British readers liked it despite him considering Pet Sematary too bleak and how it just spirals down into darkness. It seems to be saying that nothing works and nothing is worth it, and I don't really believe that. Film. Pet Sematary was made into a film in the autumn of 1988 and directed by Mary Lambert, starring Dale Midkiff as Louis, Fred Gwynne as Judd, Denise Crosby as Rachel and Miko Hughes as Gage. A man, Andrew Hubatsk, was chosen for Zelda's role, because the filmmakers could not find a woman bony enough to portray the terminally ill girl. A sequel, Pet Sematary 2, was released in 1992. In March 2010, it was announced that a remake was in the works, with Matt Greenberg currently working on the screenplay. On the 21st of September 2010, Guillermo del Toro announced that he would like to direct the Pet Sematary remake, along with a new adaptation of another Stephen King novel, but stated that his busy schedule made it unlikely that he would be able to work on either film anytime soon. As of October 31, 2013, Lorenzo di Bonaventura and Steven Schneider were producing the remake, and both Di Bonaventura and the studio were in talks with Juan Carlos Fresnadillo in talks to direct the remake. In October 2017, Paramount announced that Dennis Widmyer and Kevin Coolidge, the team that wrote and directed the 2014 thriller Starry Eyes, would helm the new adaptation. Radio. In 1997, BBC Radio 4 broadcast a dramatisation of the story in 6 half-hour episodes, later re-edited into 3-hour-long episodes. It was adapted by Gregory Evans and starred John Sherian as Louis Creed, Bryony Glasgow as Rachel Creed and Lee Montague as Judd Crandall. The production was directed by Gordon House. Music. In 2002, New York horrorcore rapper Cage wrote the song Ballad of Worms, which was featured on the album Eastern Conference All-Stars 3, for the independent hip-hop label Eastern Conference Records. Before thought to be about his relationship and struggle with the hip-hop community, he later revealed it was a love song dedicated to the Pet Sematary character Zelda. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?